All right, good for you. You decided to press on. Bravo. Well played. And for it, you will be richly rewarded. In fact, this particular strategy is an answer to many of your prayers. The prayers of, please, I just need more time. Time to finish. Time to hit my goals. Time to work out. Time to sleep. Time off. More time with my family or more time with my friends' passion pursuits or hobbies. This encounter right here is going to feel like God's reply to your prayers was, great, no problemo. Yeah, by the way, for some reason, God in my head speaks in Spanglish for some reason. So he says, great, no problemo. How much time would you like, mi amigo? And I will grant you all that you ask for anything that you want. Wouldn't that be great? To have that kind of power, God-like powers to seemingly just manufacture time out of thin air. Well, William taught me how to do just that. And now I will pass that almighty secret on to you. What I'm about to share with you here was the moment during my time with William that actually still haunts me and terrorizes me a little bit, literally every day, often several times throughout the day as I make choices in what I'm going to do and how I should go about leading my life. When I read this line off of William's manuscript that said, do now so you never have to do again, the air in the room changed. It was almost like time stood still for a moment. When I read that line, it seemed to disturb William. His head dropped slightly, and from there, it hung there for a few beats. He took off his glasses, and he closed them in his fist and put his chin on it and looked off into the distance. And I watched as his eyes welled up. It actually startled me a bit. I wasn't sure what to say. I was worried if I had already intruded somewhere where I shouldn't. So, after a long pause, William began to speak, but all that came out was, you see, Mary. And then his voice trailed off as he choked up again. His estate manager, who had come in to refresh our tea, after hearing Mary's name, asked me if I would kindly turn off my recording device. Of course I did. And now I was even more nervous that I had done something wrong. When William was ready, he cleared his throat and started to tell me the story. So Mary was William's daughter, and she was born in 1930, which, if you remember, was also at the beginning of the Depression. And William's business dealt with railroads, and that required him to be gone away from home for long stretches at a time. And when he was home, he was consumed with the stress and pressures of trying to keep his business alive, as well as keep his men who worked for him alive as well. When Mary was 8 years old, she became very, very ill, and later it was discovered that she had acute leukemia. Now, back then, they used arsenic to treat her form of leukemia. The consumption of this poison, of course, made Mary very, very weak and also, of course, very, very sick. William told me the story of him coming back from an extended trip that he had been on, and instead of going home, he went straight to the hospital to check on Mary. At the time, if you remember some of the old photos, these hospital facilities were organized as wards with a dozen or so beds per room. And he said to me, Mary's was the fifth one from the door on the left, motioning his left hand like that. And like he was still standing in the room looking at her from the door. He went on, he said, the nurses would tell me how Mary had spent most of her day staring at the entrance door, just hoping the next person to enter would be me. And I could see that when he said that, William's lip quivered as he recalled that memory. But today, as I walked in, he said, she was staring at the ceiling. It wasn't until I got 3 beds in that she spotted me. And what seemed like a lifeless form immediately sprang to life, at least in her eyes, as she could barely move her head anymore. As I got up close to her, she said, Daddy, you're here. William looked away again as he said it. He said it was how she said it that caught me, as if she had gotten used to me not coming through that door. William, now looking back straight at me, said, while her eyes were bright with joy, she looked so sullen, so weak. And when I asked her what I could do, she replied, and then I could see that William's eyes began to fill once again. She said, just play with me, Daddy. You never play with me. And then William's voice trailed off. William looked at me again, a tear now visibly running down his cheek, and said, she passed away before her 9th birthday. He now looked at me sternly and said, you keep calling me a success, but I failed. I failed Mary. I failed my little girl. He paused and then added, and there's nothing I can do about it. No amount of success, no enterprise, no charitable work, nothing can bring her back. After a moment of stillness in the room, he added, the failure wasn't in that she died. The cancer and the treatment of the times determined that. The failure was that she didn't live with me enough in her life. And that is my failure, one that I could have prevented if I would have known. And then William got very serious. He said, young man, as he called me, the reason why you're here, the reason I accepted your request is because you said you'd help me help my future generations of my family know the pathway to respect, affection, and prosperity. And that is a worthy project. But I accepted this invitation because I want to help future generations of my family avoid my tragic failure. The failure that was being too busy to pay attention to my life, the things that really mattered in life. You are here for Mary. Now, I was visibly choked up. I didn't know if it was because I was trying to imagine just how heartbreaking it must be to helplessly watch your 8-year-old little girl slowly pass away, or if it was for William's naked confession of failing her, or if it was because I now realized I had William's atonement and Mary's legacy at stake. After Mary's death is when William vowed that he'd never be, quote unquote, too busy again. After a lot of soul searching and spiritual recovery, William explained how the more he studied it, the more he realized how busy was just a front. It's just a guise, a cover, and an excuse. An excuse we use to hide our weakness and our fear, he said. He said, we covertly use the illusion of quote unquote busy so that we can avoid what is hard and what is uncomfortable. Being busy gives us a seemingly justifiable excuse to put off or to not do what we know we should but really don't want to. He said, I used to believe that being busy meant that I was important and I was working really hard. But I learned what it really meant was that I was lazy and I was out of control. Busy is a product of lazy thinking and lack of self-control. We are too lazy to do the proper planning and the prioritization and too weak to stick to that plan. Ultimately, busy can become a way of life and can rob you of life, like it did my life with Mary, he said. And that is when I asked, okay, but what if you do have too much to do and you do have too little time to do it? That's when William replied, you can make time. And that is when he taught me how to manufacture time. It was all contained in that one line of wisdom that I read on that paper. Do now so that you never have to do again. So let me explain it to you from William as he explained it to me. Then I'll help you make sense of it in your own life. William said, back in my 40s, I had this 4-acre property. Beautiful rolling grass hills surrounded our home out in the country. The problem was all that beautiful grass needed to be mowed every other week. Every other Saturday, there I was, pushing that mower over those 4 acres. It would take me all day, all Saturday was spent pushing that mower. I enjoyed it the first few Saturdays, and then it became a real chore, one that never stopped. The grass never stopped growing, he said excitedly. Then he explained that one day he was at the hardware store and he sees one of those fancy ride-on mowers. He said, I thought those were just for sporting fields or golf courses and parks and too extravagant an expense. But after many months of killing myself on those sweaty Saturdays, I was feeling a little desperate and made the irrational, as he called it, decision to buy one. Then he explained how now it only took him 4 hours on Saturday, and he said it was a lot easier and more enjoyable. But it was still a chore and one that kept me from spending that precious weekend time with my family, he said. And then he explained how one day he's out driving through the neighborhood and he saw a young man mowing a yard. He saw that the boy was too young to actually be the owner of the home himself, so William stopped his car and called the boy over. The boy confirmed that he had been hired to mow this family's property. William asked the boy what he charged, quickly calculated the value of gaining those 4 hours back with his family, and hired the boy on the spot. Those 2 steps right there literally manufactured time for William. The time he once never had, he now did. From then forward, William had every Saturday completely free to be with his family. He said it almost felt like an act of God, one that was certainly a blessing to me and my family. He concluded by saying, I started looking for ways to manufacture time all around me, finding ways to free me up from the labor of things so that I could focus on the leadership I needed to provide my companies. Now, let me explain how the framework, looking back on what William did, that allowed him to go from struggling, exhausted, and overburdened with labor to the owner of several multi-billion-dollar enterprises with complete time freedom, from having no time to having all the time in the world, how he manufactured more time in the same 24/7, 365 construct that we all operate in, how he and now you can create your own act of God. First off, let's establish the 3 levels to find where you fit now and how to get to the next level above you if you choose. The 3 levels are laborer, leader, and owner. William started out as the laborer, mowing the lawn himself. Even as the laborer, you can manufacture time. If you work for somebody else, you can still play God. What William did is he found a tool to expedite the same result. He was now able to do in 4 hours what he used to have to spend 8 to 10 hours to do. And the tool made it far easier for him to do it. All to get the exact same result, a mowed lawn. In fact, the tool probably delivered a much better result in half the time and 1/10 the effort. You see? That's how you can manufacture time yourself. The right tools make a huge difference to your labor time. You see, it's estimated that we spend 40% of our time working on reoccurring tasks, tasks that can be systemized. You can literally manufacture almost half of your work lifetime. Imagine that. Imagine if you could produce the same outcomes, the same results in half the time. Imagine how much less stressed, overworked, overburdened you'd feel if you could produce the same result in half the time. This is what William meant when he said, do now so you never have to do again. That is taking the time to set up a standardized process, a manualized process, an automated response system, an automated applet, or a utility that repeats actions without your labor. Now, what this might require, and this is the hard part here, okay? This is the lesson here. And the reason why most never manufacture time and never get out of their grind, what it might require you to do is that you stop to take the time now to figure it out, to set up the system, to go get the tool, and then make sure that it works. And that process will require more time than just doing the labor now. So you will be tempted to just do it rather than, as William put it, do now so you never have to do again. But if you do, when it's done and it's set up, you never have to do that function again. All that time is now freed up. All that time is new to you. Time you didn't even have before. You just manufactured all that time. You just perform an act of God. So no matter who you are, what you do, what level you are currently, you can still play God and use tools and systems to manufacture time. Now, if you feel you'd like to know more about what tasks you can automate, how others have done it, what tools and systems are best to use to automate, I cover all that in depth in the Insane Productivity Curriculum. But for now, just understand the key principle here and you'll start figuring out how to apply it. The next level from laborer is moving to level 2, which is leader. Even though William went from spending 8 to 10 hours of his Saturday on his lawn to only 4, he still found a way to manufacture even more time. And that was turning his labor into leadership. The story was drawn from when William was in his 40s, but let's use today's dollars and a more conservative income amount than what William was probably already earning in his 40s. So let's say that William was making $150,000 a year in today's dollars. In 2,000 hours, which is the typical number of hours that we work in a year, his time is then worth $75 an hour, right? That's just 2,000 divided into 150,000, $75 an hour. Now let's say that he hires someone to mow his lawn and pays on the high side $40 an hour for somebody to do that. Right away, you can see why it's not worth it for William to mow his own lawn. But if he does it, it actually costs him money to do so. He's now paying or losing the $35 an hour difference if he does it himself. Now I can hear you saying, yeah, but it's on a Saturday and he wasn't working anyway. To that terrible mentality, I say, which I run into incessantly, by the way. So even though I'm sure you are not a bad or horrible person, you are in the majority who have that bad and horrible philosophy. So let's straighten you out on this. 1, you need rest and recovery over the weekend so that you can do your $75 an hour work when the gun goes off on Monday. If you are sweating and swearing and wearing yourself out doing low-wage chores on the weekend, come Monday, you're worthless when it counts. You cannot even do and deliver your $75 an hour value if you don't have it in the tank to give. I really need you to get squared away on this in your head. Let's take a Ferrari as an example. In fact, let's take the extraordinary Ferrari LaFerrari, which has an extraordinary output of 950 horsepower, and it sells for an exorbitant $2.7 million. It is a magnificent machine, a marvel of design and engineering, and one of the most incredible high-performance cars there is, just like you are. Now, if that extraordinary car runs out of gas, it's useless. No matter how much horsepower it has, how much of a marvel of engineering and artistry it is completely and utterly useless. Just like you and your marvel of engineering and artistry is if you run out of gas. The car requires fuel to utilize its potential, and so do you. Hear me now. If you are not using that precious time in the evenings and on weekends to rest and recover and refuel, you will quickly be sidelined when the green flag is waved to start the race. So, doing low-wage, low-value chores costs you that refueling time. Stop it. You think you are saving money by doing it yourself, but you are costing yourself so much money in performance and potential in the end. Just stop it. And stop robbing the young man of $40 to mow your lawn too. Come on. The second philosophy I want you to grasp is this. In our youth and less wise years, we exchange our time for money. Now, once we grow in our wisdom and some wealth, we must transition to spending our money to gain time. That is the whole point and purpose. You lose the game if you trade your time for wealth and then don't use that wealth to buy your freedom. The very best use of money is to buy time. That is what freedom is. Freedom is not financial wealth. Freedom is utilizing finances to gain time freedom, control over your time and lifestyle. Do not begrudge the money that you spend on buying your freedom. Okay, that was moving into level 2, turning labor into leadership, finding, hiring, delegating lower value chores, tasks, and projects that need to be done, but probably don't need to be done by you. Certainly not at your hourly rate and not at the expense of your rest, recovery, or precious family time. Now, I'm not saying that this process is easy. In fact, it's difficult. I get that. I made many mistakes in the hiring and delegating process along my journey as well. Some of those mistakes were very costly. I've learned the hard way and what not to do. So now I can teach you the right way and the easy way to do it. Learning effective hiring and delegation can make you a fortune and save you a fortune if you know how to do it right. The resource that I have for you at the end here can shortcut this process for you dramatically. So be sure that you hang on for that. Now, to get you to level 3, if you choose to go from leader to owner, here's the key philosophical adjustment to make. If you're interested, for your notes, you remain in control, but not in charge of the day-to-day operations. This was a big epiphany that William and many other of the top superstar business leaders that I spent time with finally helped me see. Let's use Richard Branson as an example. When asked what skill he attributed his extraordinary success to, here's how he replied, quote, "If you really want to grow as an entrepreneur or a leader of any kind, you've got to learn to delegate." Then he went on to explain that when he and his friends first started up Virgin, he knew that he was lacking vital knowledge on some of the subjects it was going to take to build these businesses. He knew that he needed to hire and delegate key areas that he struggled with to other people who also believed in the project. He said he learned this one skill very early in his career, delegation. And he attributes the success of his 400 plus companies today to that single skill, the art of delegation. You see, with Branson's 400 companies, while he remains in control, because he's the owner, he remains in control, which is also the reason why he's worth now over $5 billion. He is not in charge of any of them. He has capable people who run the day-to-day, while he spends most of his time on his private island, wakeboarding and looking for the next industry to tackle. He's in control, but not in charge. He has empowered specialists and leadership to be responsible for the day-to-day management of those enterprises. That's the magic difference. So after my time with William and the others that I have learned life-changing insights from, that is the evolution that I have gone through. I started out, probably like a lot of you that are watching me now, from being the laborer, doing it all myself, doing all the work myself, grinding it out, and then working myself ragged, to leadership, having a team of people start multiplying my time and impact, to moving from being in charge of the day-to-day internal operations of the few companies that I am owner in, but still being in control. And I will tell you, by doing the hard work of learning and growing and developing and making the tough choices to graduate me up the levels, I now work fewer hours today than I did at the beginning of my career. Take 10 times more vacation. I'm far less stressed. I spend 95% of my time working on things only that I enjoy. Oh, and it also has caused me to earn more and live a lifestyle that I could never have even imagined before, all because I learned these essential skills. So I really hope that you're grasping what I am passing forward to you here. And do not worry. The prize I have for you at the end of this encounter will help you drill down on all these concepts further. We can radically simplify, streamline, and free you up from a lot of what is burdening your time and stressing you out if you are currently at the laborer level. And when it comes to finding, vetting, hiring, motivating, and leading people so that you can go from laborer to leader, I won't leave you hanging there either. You'll also learn more about not just why to delegate, but how to do so effectively as well. It's a science, one that you can learn when you know the formula. Okay. Now, in our final encounter together, I'm going to share with you what got William going from his teary recollections of his greatest failure to belly laughing, slapping his knee, and nearly falling off his chair as he explained this third principle to me. He started by saying, "Oh, this one is the bee's knees." I had no idea what that meant, by the way. I had to look it up. Apparently, it means the height of excellence or the best. So you've got that to look forward to. Your password key to unlock encounter number 3 is freedom. If gaining it, as I explained it, is interesting to you at all, then use it to unlock what's next and access to the invitation that I've been telling you about. That is also at the end of the next encounter as well. So I'll see you in the final encounter.